maybe around 2004. We went to Bahrain, like 100 people. And I swear to God, nobody knew what venture capital was. Then the oil boom came, a lot of cash. At the peak in 2007, 2008, there was 103 private equity funds.
Wow.
Every bank had a PE fund. Every Dick, Tom, and Harry had it.
Wow.
It was a spaghetti.
Okay.
And people were, raising hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, if you do an IPO, you raise 800 times the capital.
This is IPOs here.
Yeah,
in the
that
region.
was in 2006, 2007. Then the market crashed. Overall, basically, the music stopped at that time.
Have we recovered as a region from the Abraaj fallout?
Look, I was asked this question many times.
Support for the show comes from Capital.com, a global investment platform that is becoming local. They've recently set up their offices in Dubai, which means they are locally regulated and provide local banking solutions. If you are a new investor, you can visit Capital.com's website and browse through their learning materials. And if you are a seasoned investor, you can benefit from news and analysis so that you can make informed decisions. Visit capital.com, that's capital.com, to start investing today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Lulu. My guest is Imad Ghandour, the co-founder and managing director at CedarBridge Capital, an investment company that is operating in MENA, Europe, and the UK. Throughout his nearly 20-year career in private equity, Imad has invested $500 million in over 40 companies with a focus on consumer, beauty, education, healthcare, and technology. In this episode, we're going to learn the art of buying a company. What are some of the operational improvements that need to happen? How do you manage the team? How do you invest in growth? And how do you eventually sell this company 5 to 10 years later, especially here in the Middle East? We're also going to talk about two specific cases from the CedarBridge portfolio, the Grooming Company Holding, which CedarBridge has recently exited, and also Kids First Group, which they sold back in 2018. We're also going to talk about how the team has successfully operated companies outside of the MENA region. Imad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lulu. Thanks for hosting me.
It's great to have you here. I think the idea for this episode is to get people to understand what it takes to buy a company, what it takes to improve it and grow it, and what does it take to actually eventually sell it in this part of the world. And you've been doing that for nearly 20 years.
Too long.
Too long. Behind the scenes, I must say, you're not the most public person out there.
I'm the least public. We don't even issue one press release. The last transaction we did, the buyer issued like tons of press releases. We issued zero.
So why? Is that a strategy?
Look, I think investors who want to invest with us know about us. I go always in meetings with people I don't know, and they have heard about us, hopefully mostly positively. And I don't care about, going for the bigger public. I mean, I need 100 clients, right? I mean, maximum.
Yeah.
This is what you need. So why go and spend time basically doing the press releasing and this and that? And it brings also some unwanted noise that you don't want, really.
Interesting.
That's
unique.
my philosophy area. It's very different than most of the industry, I would say.
Yeah, that's a very unique way to approach it, especially because you are a company that is actively seeking to buy other companies, right? So how do you build the awareness around CedarBridge so that you have this sort of pipeline of companies?
When people want to sell a school, a nursery, they come to us.
Okay.
We have a significant pipeline.
So the market is relatively small.
Yeah, people know, and people hear, and eventually people know that CedarBridge bought this or that and is owner of this and that. And we have some landmark, transactions. So they stay in the memory that we buy in education, we buy in beauty, we buy in healthcare and food and beverage. So it's and technology through our VC fund. So people know. I don't think we have a shortage. We had like 3,000 leads since inception. So there is no shortage of deal flow.
So how did you get into this whole industry? When I was looking up your background, I saw you studied engineering. So how does an engineer wind up in private equity?
So I was working in a family office, Abdul Latif Jamil family office.
This is after university, sir?
It was first I was in consultant. Okay. So after university, I came into after my MBA, went into consultancy and worked for almost 10 years out of Beirut, but covering the region.
Okay.
And I have very interesting projects like in Iraq, I think it was 1998 when everything is closed, but I'll tell you later about this if we have time. After that, Abdul Latif Jamil Family Office hired me to take care of their technology investments because I had the business background, the consulting background, and I'm a computer engineer by training. So I had both, requirements. So they hired me and I moved to Dubai. That was almost 2003.
Okay.
And I remember at that point, maybe around 2004, some guy called Abdullah Subyani, he works in Aramco, and called for a summit a meeting for all venture capital people in the Middle East. And we went to Bahrain, like 100 people. And I swear to God, nobody knew what venture capital was. Nobody knew what private equity was. We spent like a year defining the terms and translating them to Arabic. And, entrepreneurs wanted to be part of venture capital. And, even Aramco wanted to be part of this at that time. It was a spaghetti. So eventually the industry got defined. I got elected to the board of that association called the Gulf Venture Capital Association in 2004. At that time, also on the board was another very good friend of mine now called Ahsan Jawad. We became good friends, and he used to run Zawiya.
Yes.
And he used to have all these information databases about this and that. He told me, Imad, why don't, since you like research and information, why don't you basically help me to create a private equity monitor? So really to have a database of private equity association. And we started from that basically.
Private equity funds.
But to monitor basically the private equity activity.
Okay.
And at that time there were two funds. I mean, on the PE side there was Abraaj First Fund, and HSBC had a fund at that time. I forgot there was one VC fund that was active, backed by Islamic Development Bank and a few other, and Gulf Finance House. So there were three funds, and we started collecting data, and then the oil boom came, a lot of cash, and suddenly everybody wanted to open a private equity fund, and we continued monitoring these funds. At the peak in 2007, 2008, there was 103 private equity funds.
Wow.
VC at that time died pretty much because of what happened in the 2000 crisis, tech crisis. So, but PE was basically the boom. And
103 funds?
103 funds. Every bank had a PE fund. Every Dick, Tom, and Harry had
Wow. Okay.
And people were, raising hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was the West, the Wild West. It's
okay. So you decided you wanted to raise a fund as well.
At that time, I decided, I again randomly was in a conference, and there was this guy who sold his company, and he said many things, but he said, if you want to make money, see what other people are doing, and go see who's driving the Ferraris, and go and see what they're doing and do the same. I mean, you don't have to be a genius. Just look around, see who's doing money, and imitate.
Yeah.
And I looked around, I saw these guys raising the hundreds of millions. So I didn't raise a fund, but I joined Gulf Capital, which was at that point in early stages of formation. So my friend, his childhood friend, Karim al-Salah, Dr. Karim al-Salah, was setting up Gulf Capital. I was employee number 2. We sat in a small office. Now Gulf Capital is much bigger. But at that time, it was 2 offices and a conference room. And he had one office, and all of us had another office. And eventually, he built a great business. So this is how, and then Abraaj started raising more funds, and it was 500 million and $1 billion, and at the peak there was $22 billion of dry powder.
Wow.
And then, of course, after, not during the financial crisis, but soon after there was a decline.
So was there consolidation, or was there a lot of money lost, or what? I mean, apart from the Abraaj story, but which maybe we can touch on very briefly. But apart from that story, what happened to the 103 funds?
Well, many of them folded because they worked as long as there's somebody else buying, and it's higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
And it was the play of the day was, I raise money, I do something, and then I list the company, and the IPO goes like 10 times. It was bonanza days. I mean, if you do an IPO, you raise 800 times the capital.
This is IPOs here.
Yeah,
in the
that
region.
was in 2006, 2007. So everybody was playing that play, but then the market crashed. And with the crash, basically, there was no IPO play, and then the valuation went down drastically. And with that, basically, a lot of people bought very high. We bought some businesses at ridiculous prices with Gulf Capital. Luckily, we actually made money. But overall, basically, the music stopped at that time. And also the capital dried. I mean, there was still oil money coming, but not for private equity because a lot of people burned their hands. So that was around 2008, 2009. And then basically there was a bit of a lull, and then the VC boom came later. And that stayed for also another 7, 8 years. And then I don't know how to describe it now.
Yeah. It's interesting at the moment.
It's sober.
It's sober, yeah. It's interesting at the moment.
It's more sober, yeah.
So I remember the sort of the marquee event for the VC industry to me was the 2010 event that was put out by Abraaj to launch WAMDA at the time, which was called Celebration of Entrepreneurship, which kind of brought thousands, I think 2,000 people to the region. So kind of like your Bahrain conference 10 years before that. So I think that was, to me, the what sort of put the whole VC startup entrepreneurship thing on the map here.
Yeah, I remember that event very well.
Have we recovered as a region from the Abraaj fallout? When you go out, you're operating not only in the region. Yeah. In your deck, you said you have around 90 family offices and investors in your fund, which is amazing. Are they all here?
The vast majority are Gulf and a bit of Lebanese and Egyptian.
Okay, so it's not, you don't have global investors?
Not yet.
Have we recovered, you think, the region from the fallout of Abraaj?
Look, I was asked this question many times, and honestly, I never felt it. In a sense, and not only me, but many others who raised capital. A lot of my peers have raised capital, in the past few years. People learned the lesson that they need to be discerning, and they need to get the information, and they need to have the transparency. But it never really stopped. The Abraaj thing didn't really kill the PE business. The issues were much, was linked to the financial crisis, was linked to basically the change in the UAE economy in 2008, 2009, and the economic fallouts during that period, and the impact on the banks and so on. So that really what impacted, much more so than the Abraaj episode. The Abraaj episode was a learning lesson, I would say, for investors. And I have never encountered somebody telling me, I'm not going to invest in you because I saw what happened to Abraaj. Mm-hmm. No, that didn't happen.
Okay.
And I didn't see it happening to any of my peers as well.
Okay. So it was a lesson learned, but as you said, it didn't really have.
It happens anyway.
You are still able as a good fund to raise money, and
people look and see who you are if they trust you. And I always say investment is a business of trust. If they trust you, they will give you money.
Yeah.
And the same happened in the US. There were a lot of problems in the US in many investments because people still invested, right? I mean, they never stopped.
So you started off with a relatively small fund, right? In comparison to the hundreds of millions that were being raised.
We believe that the opportunity exists more on the smaller side, where you can buy something, even if you pay a bit more, a bit less, and then you add value by making it bigger. And I can give you so many case studies from our experience. As CedarBridge, what we excel in is buying small companies and scaling them up to become champions. And we underline the word champions because really we'd like to create something which we're proud of. We say we did something. It's not just a financial transaction. I bought for one, I sold for three, or it's something you want also to enjoy and be proud of. So if you buy $100 million company, it's very hard to scale it, especially in the region. How much can you scale it? How much effort, how much capital do you want to scale it? So whereas if you buy a $10 million company, there is a lot of room, right? I mean, you can go to Saudi, you can do this, you can add another business line and so on, and even go beyond the region to internationalize the business, which opens even new markets and new horizons. And then you can make it a $50 million company, and that's much easier than taking 100 and making it 500. So that's our thesis. We have access to a lot of capital. If we need 50 or $100 million, it's easily accessed for a specific deal. We're backed by many of the best family offices. They continue to invest with us. So it's not something that we shy off, but we enjoy actually building the business and basically making it a champion in its market.
And when you invest in a company, so I saw in some cases where you invest from your fund, but you also have some co-investments as well.
Yeah, we bring a lot of co-investors, and that's again part of our secret formula. Is we bring a lot of so the fund underwrites the first investment, and then we ask our investors to come with us, and they like this because they can pick and choose and back some of the interesting companies we invest in.
Okay, so what's the target size that you normally look for?
Usually $10 to $20 million, sometimes less, sometimes more, but that's usually our sweet spot.
And you buy how much of the company usually? You want to buy the whole thing, or?
We can buy the whole thing. All of us in the team have ran businesses, so we're willing to sit as a interim CEO. Majority is nice, and keeping the founder to run with the minority, that's ideal. Sometimes we are comfortable with the shareholders and we buy a minority, not like too small, but like 30-40%. So we're a bit flexible. As long as we know what we're doing and we trust the people we're partnering with, we're happy to be a bit flexible.
Okay.
But we go all the way to 100%, and we're not shy from asking somebody to leave because for any reason he wants to leave, and stepping in his shoes and running the business. And we did that many times.
How many? You are four partners in CedarBridge?
We are four on the PE side and two on the VC side.
And the VC is relatively new.
Is relatively new and very separate. I mean, I happen to sit on the investment committee on both, but other than that, they run their own business.
Because PE investors, I would imagine they have a completely different risk tolerance than a VC investor, right?
100%.
So how are you comfortable
and the
with
thinking is different, and everything is different.
The stage, the valuations are different.
I had to recheck my brain.
Yeah.
Okay.
How does your brain reconcile when you're buying, when you're making a VC investment at, I don't know, a $10 million valuation, for example?
Look, I'll tell you, first I take the lead from my partner, Isa and Rakan, and they're very competent doing what they're doing. We can do all the metrics, revenue, multiple, blah, blah, blah. But really, you have to have a view based on the market, how much this business will sell for. If I'm going to think this is going to sell for 50, then the most I can buy it for is as a valuation of 5, right? 5 billion. So,
so you look for a 10x return.
It has to be sizable because this is, pretty much your. So there is a lot of risks that involved. I think if you go for a lower multiple, like 5 to 10 is reasonable, but anything lower, you're probably not going to do well.
Yeah. So you're experimenting on the venture capital side?
No. Actually, we're not experimenting at all. Isa has been in this business for the longest time. He runs the business. He's a veteran. I bring my, 2 cents of wisdom, especially on the operational side and legal side from the PE. And I think we have a very nice combination because we're probably one of the very few VCs that can inject a sense of operational realism. Okay, if there is a word like that.
I like that.
It's not, it's not, okay, burn. But, there are a few things you can do to improve, to build a team. When they want to hire somebody, sometimes they come to me, interview him. Because I interviewed much more people than he did. I inject that level of realism on the operational side. But Ais and Rakan, who lead the VC team, they take all the decisions. And on the IC, I give them just some operational insight, especially also on the legal side, because in PE you do a much more elaborate legal structure. So sometimes it's needed as well.
So how did you decide to get into, so going back to your PE business with CedarBridge, how did you decide to go into things like beauty? Education, I can see it. I think there's a lot of opportunities and healthcare potentially, but things like, beauty.
Look,
and massage parlors and stuff like that.
We like to be contrarian, okay? And we built, all our PE businesses, or at least the funds, they're built to generate dividends, which is also contrarian, because most PE funds I know of, actually all of them, never generate dividends. They sell a business, they give you the proceeds. Yeah. They sell another business, they give you the proceeds. So we created basically this business to generate dividends, almost like a real estate. And it's quite unique. And
so every quarter you're paying dividends? Every
quarter there's exactly, the dividend. We plan it ahead. And it all started by pure chance. So in 2011, we were raising from our first investor in Kuwait. And he said, yes, I'm going to give you money, but I don't like this PE stuff. I want something that pays me all the time. And then when you sell the business, you can pay me a big check. I said, okay, we'll do it. Just give us the money and we'll figure it out. Luckily, where we were focused with that fund, the first fund, was on consumer businesses. And consumer businesses are a lot, their cash cycle is quite good. So,
can you give an example? Like what kind of?
If you invest in a grocery store or in a coffee shop or in a nursery or in a school, people pay cash. The next day you get cash. It's... So you're able to generate cash and you're able to distribute these dividends. Okay. And eventually we perfected this art of distributing dividends on a quarterly basis. And people rely on it, even like big family offices. They say, we like this, it pays the salaries at least. We don't have to worry about, the big paycheck later on. It's every quarter I know I'm getting this as an income.
Yeah. That's very interesting because PE is normally very illiquid, right? And VC is the same. So your money is locked for 7-10 years. What's the typical PE fund tenure?
It is usually 10 years.
10 years, okay.
In the region, it extends more because it's super illiquid in the region.
There's no exits, right? Like
there's very
it's difficult to exit. Yeah.
Each exit takes you at least a year to 2 years, at least if you're lucky.
A year to 2 years to make it happen from start of discussions. 1 to 2 years. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So so PE is very illiquid. So you kind of found a way to make people here feel more relaxed about it. That I'm going to get a payment. Okay, so why? So you said you were contrarian and you wanted to be.
So contrarian. This was the first thing, and then when we started investing in education, nobody. That was in 2007. Nobody was really looking at education because education is more, people think it's a non-profit thing. And, how do you invest and so on. So we were the first to invest in education when I was with Gulf Capital. And eventually we bought a business at that time called Ma'arif, which is now being sold to, or was sold to GEMS, I think, or Hasana Capital. And then I continued investing in education, and then we built another brand that we are investors in education. So going back, why people come to us, they know we've been investing in education for 15 years. And we're the first port of call because we understand, we know the brands, we know the businesses, and so on. So that was a bit contrarian. And then on the beauty side, nobody was investing in beauty. I remember meeting one of our investors said, what's this beauty salonat? salonat shar. I told him, but, check your credit card, see how much your wife is spending on these beauty services.
Yeah.
And then he got convinced.
Yeah. No, it's
So, but most of the decision makers, fortunately or unfortunately, are men, so they don't understand this business. When we presented that we're investing in this, it was a bit contrary.
the grooming company.
Now there's a lot of people investing in beauty, and it's becoming more mainstream.
Yeah.
But I think there is way to go.
So let's talk a little bit about that as a case study in terms of how you buy the company and what you do. So the grooming company is very interesting because they own Enbar 1847 Sisters
and Jet Set, and then they have a distribution business called Welby.
Here, this is locally.
Yeah, this is locally. Eventually, we took it international as well.
I know. I remember walking in London and I saw an Enbar.
Yeah,
there. I was thinking, wow, this is amazing.
There's Saudi, Qatar, even Canada. It's as far as Vancouver.
So what was right about this investment from the get-go?
Look, I mean, first, the founders, there are two founders because there were two companies and we put them together.
Okay.
The two founders were amazing founders. They're visionary. They have a very high sense of aesthetics and luxury, and they know what it takes to position a brand at that high level. 1847 Enbar and Jet Set were founded by a lady called Negin, and Sisters was founded by a lady called Shireen. And eventually we put them together. And both of them walked away. I mean, both of them walked away, but remained somehow tied as investors and board members to the business.
Was that part of your requirements that they...
Actually, no. Again, we're happy to take it over as operators. But they liked us and they said, we want to stay involved. Negin stayed as an investor and a board member, and Shireen stayed as an investor and nominated her daughter, Sarah, to be a board member. And they were both board members with us, and we built a very positive relationship throughout. And I used to go to them whenever there is a problem or advice or whatever, and they were super helpful, both of them. And unfortunately, Negin passed away at one point, but her legacies remained. So after we put them together, I was the interim CEO.
Did you know that from the beginning? You bought them with the vision to consolidate.
We had that vision from the beginning because we thought that we will have mainly a leverage in two things. You're not going to save on people, and you're not going to save here and there. I mean, when you set a store, it costs X and it sells Y, and that's it, irrelevant how many stores you have. But we thought we will do two things, which eventually came true. Number one, we thought that we will have a better leverage with landlords, especially mall operators. Mm-hmm. So we will go with 4 brands and tell them, we can take 4 stores. Mm-hmm. And that also played well. I mean, we had a store, for example, in Mall of the Emirates, fantastic store. We have stores in Dubai Mall, again, fantastic stores. We had that leverage. And the second thing is when you have a nice business, a bigger business, and it has international prospects, you hire good people because there is excitement, right? You hire, you've been to teach. There is excitement. I'm going to go to the UK. I'm going to go to Canada. I'm going to go to Saudi.
Yeah.
So you hire more international, more experienced, more excited people, as opposed to a smaller local business.
Interesting.
So both eventually we leveraged them in that way, not necessarily in saving cost.
Other than that, why did you decide to buy these specific companies? They
generated a lot of cash.
Yeah.
I saw the cash.
This was your first investment in beauty?
In beauty, not in wellness. Yeah,
okay, so there was an opportunity cost, right, to that investment. You could have invested in another school or
I don't regret it at all.
Okay.
It is a beautiful investment. It taught me a lot as an investor. I think for the first time, we cracked how to professionalize a business, a beauty services business. It's very hard. When you go around the world, beauty services are always led by a founder. I mean, they're always, and when he goes, it fizzles. we were able basically to professionalize this and to create a system, internal system, to see how to manage this beauty business. And we created what we call the magic circle. So pretty much when you create newness, newness attracts people, people attracts revenue, revenue makes margin. And when you have money, you can attract good people, okay, therapists. And these good people eventually create a newness. And then you create that circle. And
What did you call it?
The magic circle.
The magic circle. Okay.
So eventually that circle helped us to basically, when there is no newness, okay, we know that we're not doing our job. And of course, there is a lot of
By
reporting and
newness,
systems.
you mean what? What do you mean by newness?
Something new. I mean, when
Like a new service, a new branch?
New service. It's mostly services,
Okay.
products. I'm using this. I'm using one of the most successful things that the team did was to create the gold facial. The gold facial in Sisters, it's like, it's 1,000 dirhams, so it's not cheap. And then people line up to take the gold facial.
Wow.
So it's facial, very thin gold paper.
Okay.
Okay, and then you put it on your face, and then you apply some sort of treatment on it.
Okay.
And and then there is a
Did you do
mask.
the gold facial?
No, I didn't. It's Sisters is for women, so.
Oh, okay.
But that's the newness.
Okay.
It created a lot of buzz. So again, there's so many things. At one time, Enbar got this new polish gel called gel in a bottle. Again, created the buzz, new colors, new this, new design. 1847 recently started cold bath and infrared room, again, in a much more professional and accessible setting. So you create all these buzz, and that basically brings people, and it creates this circle. And if that circle stops, then you start losing money.
When did you buy the company?
2015.
Okay, and you just exited, so it's 9 years.
9 years, yeah, including 2 years in COVID, which was a different experience.
So what you said it taught you a lot as an investor, this specific investment.
This specific investment, we hear a lot about positive management, but to work in beauty, invest in beauty, you need to be super positive. You have to come with a positive attitude, because if you propagate positive vibes to your team propagates to the therapist and eventually to the clients. And the reverse is true. So, we started, of course, like PE, we have our holy grail is EBITDA.
Yeah.
EBITDA this, EBITDA that, multiply EBITDA, subtract EBITDA, and this and that. So, it just doesn't fit, right? I mean, with beauty, EBITDA and finance and beauty don't fit together. So I changed the name from EBITDA to Candy. So, and the bonuses are linked to EBITDA, to candy. So you want more candy, eat candy, nice candy. And it became super positive, right? It was joyful,
Yeah.
Even the team, when they're presenting, even the financial reports, it was called candy.
Oh, really? On the P&L?
On the P&L, it's called candy. So, it became nice, right?
Because you have to push them, right? I mean, your job as a private equity company, you have to, This is a very interesting way in terms of reframing things, maybe, but you still needed to deliver the results.
Of course, you still needed to grow.
So even if it's called candy, it still had to grow.
But you instill these elements, okay, and you pick the right people, of course. If there's a bad apple, you remove it very quickly, and we had a few bad apples. And make sure basically they enjoy the process, because in beauty, everybody works hard. It's not that they don't work hard. The therapist works 12 hours a day, right? I mean, the manager works on weekend. The CEO works 24/7. So everybody is working hard. You just instill positive elements in that environment. So the candy was one, but it was everything. It was celebrating success every time. I insist on people celebrating success. Last October, Anbar and 1847 won the global awards for men's spa and for nail bar, respectively. I insisted that everybody flies business class to Athens and take the award. You have to celebrate these things. Okay, so you create this that environment, and that eventually, with the right people, creates a huge momentum. On top of that, of course, as an owner, you have to put the right strategy, because if you ask them to push against the wall, it's not going to happen, right? Even if they're the best team around. If you put the right strategy and show them the expansion and show them how to go outside and show them how to open Saudi and lay the groundwork and help them in that work, then basically they will run. They'll do the operational work needed.
How much involvement do you think you, as a private equity investor, do you need to have with your portfolio companies?
We tend
what are you personally comfortable with?
Yeah. Look, we tend to be operationally involved. At the beginning, you are more involved. With time, the relationship builds up. The team knows exactly what they need. And I would say, for example, if I go to the grooming company, at the end, I wasn't that involved. They were running the show.
And before, what was it? You were there weekly?
It was more weekly and daily.
EBITDA, weekly EBITDA.
No, but you go into the nitty-gritty. You need to discuss very tangible operational issues, okay? Today, I need these people or this investment to improve customer journey, okay? You understand this because you've been through the process.
So as a PE investor, you identify this company and you have to set an investment, right, to grow it. So what is your ideal time frame to kind of continue investing before you start seeing growth? So in the grooming company example.
The grooming company needed... we wanted to open too many stores. Unfortunately, here, landlords don't deliver on time. So we commit to this location, that location. Sometimes it's delayed multiple years.
Oh, wow.
So that delayed us. That was one of the major delays. If you step back, basically, you want to invest in a sector that's growing. And if you go, like beauty, you go and look at beauty statistics, beauty sector statistics, it's always growing. Even in the downturn, it was growing. There was a famous saying, I think, during the Great Recession in the 30s, called the lipstick effect, when an economist observed that while the economy was going 50% down, lipstick sales went 50% up. And, women usually resort to beautify themselves. They go to beauty services, lipstick or whatever, and men drink alcohol. So anyway, so it was always a growing business and continued to be an excellent sector too. So first you have to pick the right sector. You need to have the wind behind you, and then you start basically understanding the dynamics and position yourself with the right player, with the right team, and so on. If you don't have the right team, you start basically looking to build the right team, which also takes time. There is no one answer fits all, Lulu. So each case you have to basically put the puzzle together.
Yeah. What can the private equity industry do better when it comes? You do have a reputation, maybe not you personally, but private equity does have a reputation as being, this kind of ruthless investor coming in, cutting down staff, efficiencies, margins, and all of that. So, what do you think the industry can do better as a whole?
I know this reputation. I don't know I haven't seen it. Most private equity players at the end employ more people by statistics.
By growing the company.
Yeah, by growing the companies and so on, and create better jobs, higher salaries and everything. There is a contribution we bring as an industry to the economy because at the end we facilitate the movement of capital between people, investors, and companies. And the biggest issue is with family offices and is, okay, fine, I have a subsidiary I don't want. I have a cousin, I want him to get out. What do I do to get private capital into this professional capital? And we're very different from family offices in the sense that we're professional, right? We don't have any emotional attachment.
Yeah.
We don't come with a family label, plus or minus. And, we bring a set of skills that's much needed for especially these family offices.
How active is the M&A market now? So you said, so let's talk a little bit about the exit, right?
Yeah.
Like selling that business. I mean, how do you go about it? Or when do you know it's the right time to exit? Is it purely where you are in your fund cycle, or are there other things that you look at?
Look, it's a hunch, honestly. And when you want to sell, you put a number in your mind. I tell them, I buy in a way, and I sell like I'm in a bazaar. I want X, and I only will accept X, and that's it.
But this you don't communicate, or you?
Of course, you communicate.
You communicate
You
this.
communicate, but you justify as well why X.
Okay.
But honestly, it works, and it works best if you have a champion. If you're number one in your industry, people want you. I mean, this is exactly what happened in TGCH. It
The grooming
occupied. Yeah, I mean, the grooming company, all its brands, Sisters, 1847, and Bar, were the best in their class. So if you want the top, basically they were the best in their class. And, the buyer eventually, that was his only option. I mean, that's the only option is basically to buy TGCH to grow. That's.
Do you seek buyers, or do you do it direct, or do you engage like a third party?
It's better to be in control, not just to wait and somebody comes in and knock on your door and say, I want to buy.
Okay.
You're always listening. But if you want to maximize, you choose the right time. You create a process. It can be a limited process. You don't have to send it to 100 people on your mailing list. It can be the 10 people that are most likely to buy it, and you have that a bit personalized interaction, which is probably the best thing that works in the region. But eventually you control the timing. You control the timing in terms of the value of the business. You know where's the value, if it's peaking and so on. And then you exit. And by controlling the timing, you create a bit of tension. You also get feedback, what's the value of the business. Okay, even higher, lower, you know what people are willing to pay for it. But it's better to do that than to just, hope for the best and, wait for people to knock on your door.
Is it like an auction style?
It's an auction or a process or a limited process. I mean, you set it. And
so you say, I want to sell for 10, let's say, as an example.
Yeah.
And then how do you, what if 3 of them come back with 10? What do you do? Or then they have to bid up?
They get them up. But usually you have to aim high in life, right?
Yeah. Okay.
You try to aim high. So I don't think we got we had a number and everybody came with the number. I think it was more like, everybody was below the number and then you get them up to
closer to the number.
Close that
Interesting.
gap.
And was it the same? So you had another interesting investment, which is in nurseries, right? Which is Kids Group?
Kids First, exactly.
Kids First Group. Yeah. Was it a similar experience, or was there any kind of
it was
major differences?
We were at an earlier stage as CedarBridge. Again, positive management. We had a great partner.
You're dealing with teachers.
Teachers and kids. I mean, kids, very young kids, 3 years, 2 years. But I have to say, I had a great partner, Kamil Najjar. We complemented each other during that journey, and he continued with the business after we left.
Was it his business, or he was brought in as a CEO?
We sat together, actually, and we again, when you do these things, you look at the need, the market. So it was a booming market because people are getting to know about nurseries more and more and are keen to put their kids more and more. The most educated people used to do it for a longer time. But now it's becoming part of the mass market. We sat and basically put a plan together, and we invested together, and he ran the business, and I helped him initially. Again, my involvement was initially, I was helping a lot. And then with time, he ran it himself. He didn't need any input from me. And it was a great exit as well. We sold it for a French group. We've sold our stake. Camille remained with 10% of that business. So,
what do you like the most about private equity? What do you like about what you do?
Look, as you said, private equity has a kind of a negative connotation, but I think it is mostly in the West. because you have much bigger companies with a lot of hundreds of thousands of people. So you need to basically create efficiencies.
And leverage.
And leverage. And
Do you do leverage here?
Zero.
Okay.
I mean, first, it's not available. Second, we use leverage to finance operation rather than to finance our investment.
Okay.
And here, you're creating businesses, you're creating champions. So when you create this, it's a much more positive environment. And I don't think, that connotation necessarily applies here. On the contrary, private equity is a facilitator really of growth in the region. And there are so many examples. Even when it was investing just in IPO, it was facilitating the companies to go from private to public. And they facilitated that, and they did very well. And of course, you make money in the process. But I think they do very well in facilitating growth, in identifying sectors like beauty, which were not
Probably,
on the radar screen of investors.
Yeah.
And hopefully at one point, Immorphia and TGCH will actually be a public company as well.
Yeah, why not, actually?
Yeah, they're owned by a public company, so eventually that might be a route that they will take.
What other sectors are exciting to you? Are you still going to double down on the same sectors?
We're still working in the nursery space, so we didn't leave that space completely.
Isn't it crowded, by the way, education? In
education
general?
is crowded, but we are exploring. We're now number one operator in Egypt. So we're going a bit to the other parts.
So outside GCC?
Outside UAE. UAE is crowded, but outside UAE.
Okay.
And hopefully soon we'll make our first investment in Saudi. Soon, like in this week.
Okay. Okay.
And we want to grow the Saudi market, which has a phenomenal potential.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Women are working, incomes are increasing, people are very much aware of, and the supply is zero, is almost zero, or quality supply is almost zero. So we think we'll have a big impact in that, and then create that play in that. So that's one thing we're doing. But also we're looking at things that are much more, let's say, technologically enabled. So now there is a lot of plays that are traditional businesses, but now they have a technologically enabled model, right? So we're looking at those and exploring those as well. And, you can call it late VC, but we call it, every business has to be technologically enabled nowadays. Otherwise, it will die. So we're looking at some of these models and investing in these models as well.
Okay, and VC, you're still going to be obviously doing more venture capital.
Still investing in venture. We have a lot of. We have now 17 investments and probably another 7, 8.
Wow, 17. You launched when did you launch? 3 years ago?
2021 was the first closing. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And you still want to work outside of, also internationally, outside of the MENA region, or your focus would still be?
We think there is, we think of the MENA. MENA was a term defined by the World Bank.
Okay.
So it fits within their, probably hierarchy, right? It's you're the MENA region head, I am the Europe head, and so on.
Yeah.
But really, if you look at the linkages, the Gulf has a lot of linkages with Europe. Just go to London. You're going to London in 2 weeks. Walk in the streets. You buy a lot of, especially in the consumer sector, you get a lot of the things you buy, the trends you look at are all set in Europe. So we're looking at that corridor. I call it Dubai-London corridor, anything between Dubai and London. And we find less linkages, for example, between the Gulf and Morocco, which is part of the MENA region, or the Gulf and Levant.
Turkey? You look at Turkey?
Turkey, we look at it. It's difficult to enter Turkey as a non-Turkish investor. But the UK, we have now 7 investments doing very well. And now we're looking more and more
in beauty?
In beauty, in education, beauty and education.
All right. So you are looking outside of to invest outside of the region.
And the idea is grow them in their own market, internationalize them first by coming to the Gulf, but also taking them around the world. One of our investment, for example, is in a company called Murdoch, which is a male beauty product business. And we took it to the US, we took it to Australia, of course, the Gulf. So again, how to technologically enable a traditional business of selling perfumes and hairstyling into a D2C brand that is selling mostly on Amazon and D2C channels and so on. It's that's what we're trying to do. And there is a lot of this work potentially all around. I mean, here and in Europe. And Europe, you find a lot of companies that are very interesting. They have a brand, they have a product, they have
heritage.
And heritage, but they need to get out. Yeah. And they need the capital as much as Europe has capital, but it has a very conservative capital. So they don't do, the things we do. So we find that's our edge in Europe.
What do you think made you successful in this field? What kind of traits or characteristics you think someone should have to be able to succeed in this private equity business?
Look, there are many traits. The first thing, which I always tell the team, investment is a business of trust. Nobody will give you money, even if you're bringing gold, if they don't trust you. So you need to have that repeated reputation of trust, okay? First, trust that, you're not going to do things like Abraaj. But more important, trust that, I'm going to give you $1, you're going to return it with a profit, right? Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low, but at least you're going to get a profit out of it. But also, you have to be a psychologist. You have to understand people. You have to know finance inside out. You have to know law, not only in one jurisdiction. You have to know English law, Emirati law, Saudi law, Egyptian law. At least have a good idea and then you use the consultants around you. In many cases, we negotiate our own SPAs. We do our own stuff because we have that skill set. You need to be operational. You have to go into the nitty-gritty to figure out how to extract value. It's not just I'll tell you again, going back to the grooming company, one of the biggest operational achievements at the operational level was to improve the utilization of people. That was done by basically measuring many things, but also putting people at the right time, at the right place, and having the tools, the reporting tools to know basically when do I put a therapist on the chair? Okay, when do I put a barber on the chair? And that took us some time, but that pretty much increased the candy by 50%. Over the past 3-4 years. So it's not something where everybody succeeds. If you go back to funds, so many funds get started. Only very few make it in the top 25%. Luckily, our first fund, as it's now almost finished, is in that category, top 25%. And if you're not in that category, you probably will not continue as a fund manager.
It's a very high pressure industry, right? You went through COVID, for example, which I would imagine for a company in beauty services.
We had 11 companies. At that time, the VC was not launched. We had 11 companies or 13 companies. 10 were closed totally, like zero income. And we had to, again, going back to the operational skill set, we said, okay, we made the decisions early and we made them quickly. So as of I think end of February, we cut out all the consultants. We stopped all the discretionary spending like marketing. And anybody who's on probation, we let him go, unfortunately. And then we start planning. And then the MDs who are overseeing these 13 companies had to approve every spending, even if it's a pen. And we survived. None of the companies was permanently impacted.
How do you personally deal with that? It's your responsibility at the end of the day. Your investors are looking at you.
I learned meditation, by the way, when I was, it was a very stressful period because you have bank loans, you have, and eventually it will hit you. Personally, it will hit you. So I was, in April 2020, I learned meditation. Mm-hmm. Every day I wake up, do meditation. End of the day, I do meditation. And I continue to do meditation till today. Eventually, I learned meditation through breathing, meditation in cold water. So you find your way eventually. But and then you have to have a perspective on life, I mean, you're Lebanese, I'm Lebanese. We lived in more catastrophic things than opening and closing a business, or losing a contract or so.
Yeah.
So, there are more important things in this life. So you take perspective, and that helps you basically to take the punches with a smile.
Do you work a lot?
24. There is a guy who joined us recently. So just like a few months ago. And then he took the weekend off, and then, he was answering emails the next day. So look, money doesn't sleep, doesn't take holidays, doesn't take weekends.
Okay.
But you also have the flexibility. So it has to be hand in hand.
Yeah, I think that's every time we talk about that, especially again in the entrepreneurship world, you have a lot of people that get triggered by it and say, this is unhealthy and that's not how you live, and there should be balance and so on. And then you think about it, if you look at everybody who's been really successful.
There is no substitute.
Yeah.
I haven't seen somebody taking, balanced approach to life and then, making it doesn't work.
So meditation then, that's how and the perspective.
Right.
All right. So I have a few rapid fire questions. So basically I'm just going to ask you a question quickly and I need a very short answer and we will wrap. Okay. So what brings you joy?
Bringing joy to others.
Favorite holiday spot?
Top of the mountain.
Any mountain?
I'm a hiker, avid hiker. I just came from the Alps. That's the best place.
Okay. What makes you upset?
Disrespect.
Something you love about people?
That people are good, inherently good. Honestly, you go around, people are inherently good. And, I find people who are suspicious by nature, they're missing that joy.
Something you'd love to do, but you haven't done yet?
Antarctica.
And your favorite book?
My favorite book, I have a lot of favorite books.
Okay. One that you think our listeners should check out, or a book that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Look, the last one I read, which was interesting, Chip Wars.
Chip Wars?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about mostly semiconductor, since the invention of the transistor in the 50s until today, and how it's shaping geopolitics. Sometimes you hear all this noise, but really underneath it is this semiconductor war, really. Who controls semiconductors? So who's controlled? Because that's AI, that's missiles, that's everything.
Wow.
Communication, it's who controls Taiwan pretty much controls the world.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah. And it's actually a very nice book, very well written. The author is amazing, did a lot of research. It actually talks about how the USSR basically disintegrated. It was as a result of their gap between them and the Americans in terms of semiconductors.
Wow.
And eventually they can't catch up, and they cannot, have guided missiles and satellites and so on. And they gave up.
So the name of the book again?
Chip Wars.
Chip Wars. Okay.
That's the latest I've read.
Thank you, Imad. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lulu. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Conversations with Lulu with Imad Ghandour, the co-founder and managing director at CedarBridge Capital Partners. I hope you found it insightful. As usual, don't forget to check out conversationswithlulu.com to listen to all the other episodes. If you're listening to this episode on any of the podcast apps like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and a review. It literally takes less than a minute and it really helps in getting the show discovered. And make sure you are subscribed on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this episode. See you in a few weeks.